In the early 2000s, a new scene came emerging out of the ashes of the previous decade's no-wave take on experimental music. In the late 90s, groups began to form in what is now referred to as the Fort Thunder scene in Providence, Rhode Island. Scraping at the edges of convention, these bands all seemed to flock to New York in search of abrasive textures and abstractions they could relate to. The first to get some widespread acclaim was Black Dice with their debut record Beaches and Canyons. It got a review in Pitchfork thanks to Marc a reviewer out of the area known for tackling the newest and more experimental projects. I would recommend checking out his column The Outdoor. Link will be in bio. Beaches and Canyons was massively influential to the other bands in the area and the scene, as they were taking a punk approach to droning electronics. The band consists of mainly Eric Copeland on vocals and electronics, Bjorn Copeland on guitar, and Aaron Warren on electronics, vocals, and bass. Although they began with a few more members. They began as a fast-paced hardcore noise rock group who were infamous for Back then they had Hisham Baruka on the drums and Sebastian Blanc on the bass. Sebastian quit the band before Beaches and Canyons, while Hisham would leave soon after its release in pursuit of his contributions to the Boredoms, another awesome borderline freeform band led by Yamantaka Ai. Bjorn and Eric, the brothers of the band, said that in playing a lot of distorted instruments on stage, they began to be more interested in the sounds of the guitars made between songs, or when the feedback began to bleed to the other sounds. Bjorn began to expand his use of effects, while Aaron and Eric followed shortly after with the effects units and samplers, often using tape loops that would have to be rewound by hand until their later records, when they shifted to more modern samplers like the Roland SP. Eric says of the transition, it stopped being thrashy and started being more sounds instead of songs. Our shows used to be all songs, then it would be the songs with these long transitions between things, instead of just flat or silent. When Aaron came along, we got better at all that stuff, and that became more of what we wanted to play. Playing the songs became secondary. Once the drummer left, the band needed a way to fill in the gap in the rhythm section, and their music entered a more dub style, which was still unable to be fit in any box. Gang Gang Dance. Drummer Tim DeWitt and keyboardist Brian DeGraw met in 2001 in Washington, D.C., and quickly began to play live shows together in the band The Cranium, where they would meet future vocalist Liz Boogatz. After a short tour to promote a small label release, they broke up and moved to New York in search of some inspiration, where they would quickly meet filmmaker Harmony Korine and make a song for his new experimental project, SSAB Songs. They formed a new group called Death and Dying, which eventually invited Liz and guitarist Josh Diamond, along with the vocalist Nathan Maddox, although Maddox would unfortunately soon pass away due to being struck by lightning. As a newly born band, they melded aspects of jazz, krautrock, ambient, hip-hop, and primal rhythms, all while vocalists sways lines of dizzying harmony in Eastern scales. As time went on, they took a more pop-oriented approach to songs with their later releases like Saint Dymphna and Eye Contact, while their early releases rely more on live instrumentation and improvisation. My favorite of this bunch is Animal Collective, a group of 4 formed in Baltimore consisting of Avi Tare, Panda Bear, Geologist, and Deacon. Deacon and Pandabear met in the 2nd grade and would form bands all throughout their school years. Eventually, Deacon would transfer to the Park School of Baltimore, a more creatively focused school where he would meet both AV and geologists. Together, they would form an indie rock group called Automine, mostly inspired by bands like Pavement and Modest Mouse.
I've got a sick and twisted settles my nerves, tap dancing dog and...
They soon began to experiment with psychedelic drugs, and the music followed. New influences began to take hold like krautrock legends Can, Silver Apples, and horror soundtracks like that of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. These abrasive textures and driving yet freeform rhythms would be a massive shift for the band, as they too began to experiment with more effects and samples inspired by Black Dice. Their debut record, which is not technically an Animal Collective release, consisted of only AV and Pandabear. AV played piano, sang, and used various electronics, while Pandabear played drums. AV says it was really more of a solo record with the drummer, but Pandabear's drumming style was such a massive part of the album that he decided to release it under both of their names. When the record was finished, they decided to go work together in a more collaborative setting and played their first show together at the Cooler with the Dog and the Pony in 2000, alongside none other than Black Dice and The Rapture. In this era of performances, they would play masked in order to feel more comfortable on stage, but eventually stopped in order to avoid the risk of getting gimmicky. They would go on to make records like Dance Manatee and Holland Again as a three-piece, now that Geologist is in the mix. As I write the script for this video, I realize I have nothing to say about these sister records and their forms. They're completely beyond description and break any sort of rule anyone has ever attempted to create for musicians, experimenting with high blistering frequencies, free jazz-style drumming, and explosions of bizarre guitar and synth tones. Deacon would join with the following release, Campfire Songs, an outdoor live album done in one take intended to be released as a new group. 2003's Here Comes the Indian would mark the beginning of a more widespread audience for the group, and the 2004 record Sung Tongues would be the one to crack the ice. They continued on in the later 2000s and 2010s, making more genre-breaking work like Feels and Merriweather Post-Pavilion, and followed in Gang Gang Dance's footsteps and heading in a continuously more poppy direction while still maintaining a complete inability to understand what any sound on any record could have possibly come from. Thanks for watching this video, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see some more in-depth dives on bands and albums in the future. If you have recommendations for things to discuss, I'd be happy to see them in the comments. Love to all, and see you soon.